Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. This is Raja Umar on my channel RU Speaks, and we are studying Pakistan studies and global perspectives on this channel. Do not forget to subscribe my channel. This is a reminder in every video to all of you so that you may be having all stuff and all videos over there for the sake of your better learning. So we are done with the Khilafat movement in the last lesson, and now we are moving towards the next lesson, that is the Delhi proposals, and we will also talk about the Simon Commission of 1927. So these two are the events of 1927, and we are going to discuss these two events over here today in our today's lesson. That would be a shorter one, not a detailed and not lengthy lesson today, as we have two small topics to discuss. So here we have the notes, that is the topic related to Delhi proposals of 1927. After 1924, the subcontinent went under the silent mode for a few years, 2-3 years. As the Khilafat movement was over, the major leadership of Khilafat movement was arrested, and the people, they had lost everything because of the failure of Hijrat movement, that they were not allowed to enter Afghanistan. So that was a sort of silent phase in between, and then it came 1927. As it was perceived, if I go to the background of a couple of events, that was the Montague-Chelmsford reforms. In those reforms, it was said that after 10 years, it would be studied that how much benefit the subcontinent might have got because of the Montague-Chelmsford reforms. If they might have got the better benefits, then the British government emphasized that the reforms would be continued. But if the subcontinent would not have got sufficient benefits out of those reforms, the British government would bring certain new reforms for that after 10 years. So it means that now from 1919, the Montague-Chelmsford reforms came, and in 1927, the subcontinent was approaching towards 10 years of the Montague-Chelmsford reforms. So it means that the British, they had started working on the new reforms prior to the time, and in the same way, the leaders over here of different political parties, they started thinking the same way, that they were perceiving that now the new reforms would come up. So they started working on them, and for that particular sake, there came the Delhi proposals by the Muslims in the leadership of Quaid-e-Azam. In 1927, Muhammad Ali Jinnah called a conference of all Muslim leaders in Delhi to discuss the future of constitutional reforms and separate electorates. Now, Muslims started thinking that whether they have got the benefits of separate electorate in the subcontinent or not, or what sort of reforms would be there in the subcontinent in the coming years. So they started making up their mind that what to be demanded in the upcoming reforms of the subcontinent. That was really very important. So in the same way, the Hindus, they also started thinking to bring certain proposals by them from the platform of Indian National Congress, and that was the event further came, that was the Nehru report. Anyways, why were the Delhi proposals came by All India Muslim League in 1927, as Muslim League presented these proposals to the British government, that these proposals are the demands of the Muslims and they should be included in the upcoming reforms introduced by the British government. So growth of Congress should work only for Hindus. I mean, why Muslims presented these proposals? The reason is the Congress was going far ahead Indian National Congress, and Indian National Congress was surpassing the All India Muslim League, and even neglecting and ignoring All India Muslim League, and even you can say that they were not even considering that there was some political power was there in the form of All India Muslim League. So for this sake, just to show their presence, the Muslims leaders and the political party All India Muslim League, the Muslims presented their proposals in the form of Delhi proposals of 1927. Congress refused to support Muslim demands for provincial autonomy. Muslims demanded a greater provincial autonomy, very especially in the provinces of Bengal and Punjab, as Muslims thought that they were in majority in these two provinces and they could be having more say and more power, more relaxations over than these two provinces. And Muslims asked the Hindus that they were supposed to support the Muslims as they had already signed Lucknow Pact. On the basis of Lucknow Pact, Muslims were perceiving that they would get the support of the Hindus, but the Congress or the Hindus, they refused to provide such support to the Muslims. So it means that the Muslim proposals, they were not being accepted by Congress. You may say that that was an end to the Lucknow Pact. Hindu revivalist movement, Hindu Mahasabha, 1927. So this particular movement was a purely Hindu nationalist movement. Only what was their slogan? That Hindustan is for Hindus and there was no right of any other community to live or to flourish within the limits of Hindustan. So that was, you can say, a really negative approach of this Hindu revivalist movement that is known as Hindu Mahasabha, and that started uprising sort of, and they started creating trouble. So it means that this particular movement was against the will and wish of the Muslims of the subcontinent. So it means that these sort of movements and the attitude of Hindus, they brought that Lucknow Pact to an end. So it proved that the Muslim demands would never be accepted by the Hindus anymore, and now the Muslims had to find out their own way to move in the political scenario of the subcontinent. Now, what were the proposals that what Muslims presented in these Delhi proposals of 1927? Muslims should be given 1/3 of the seats in the central legislature through joint electorate. So here comes another very important point. Now Muslims, they have come back to the joint electorate and they had denied their own separate electorate. It means that no, they said that their separate electorate should be taken back by the British, as what Muslims believed that they did not get any benefit out of the separate electorates, so it should not be with them. So again, the subcontinent's political system should be back to the joint electorate system, as the Minto-Male reforms of 1909, those reforms gave Muslims separate electorate, and in 1919, Montague-Chelmsford reforms, they gave the separate electorates for the Muslims, Hindus and Sikhs as well. But over here, the Muslims demanded that their separate electorate should be taken back and should be merged, and again they should be the joint electorate system. Sindh should be separated from Bombay Residency and given full provincial status. Sindh province was the part of Bombay at that time and it had not the full provincial status. You may say that it was part of the Bombay province at that time. So what was the demand of the Muslims in these Delhi proposals? That Sindh should be separated from Bombay Residency and should be given the separate individual provincial status, so that Muslims would have been another province to govern and to rule, as Sindh was a Muslim majority province. So all British reforms should be extended to Balochistan and NWFP, current Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. As you know that these two provinces, they had their own centuries old tribal system, and there was no or really very little control of the British Empire over these two provinces of Balochistan and NWFP. Currently we call it Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. So All India Muslim League demanded that the British reforms should also be extended to these two provinces, so that to bring these two provinces into the political scene, and there should be some political activity over there in those two provinces, as these two provinces were also the Muslim majority provinces. So keeping in view Muslim League was thinking, if Sindh province is to be separated from Bombay, Muslim League would get a province to rule on. If British reforms were to be imposed on Balochistan and NWFP, two more provinces would come under the control of the Muslims, I mean All India Muslim League. So it means that if Muslims get the more representation in the central legislature, they would have a greater say in the political scenario of the subcontinent. It means that they would have a greater representation of the Muslims of the subcontinent. So numbers of seats to be given to Muslims in Punjab and Bengal should be proportional to Muslim population living there. As you know that Muslims demanded 1/3 seats over here in the central legislature, but for the provincial assemblies, Muslims demanded that, especially in the province of Punjab and Bengal, the seats should be given as per the population percentage. As Muslims had the greater population over there, so Muslims were looking for more seats over there, so that more Muslims should be there in the provincial assemblies. So it means that those might be talking more for the rights of the Muslims of the subcontinent. That would be a more political power of the subcontinent. So here we have questions related to the Delhi proposals, smaller questions. Now we have another very important topic that is of the same year 1927. As you know that the British, they were thinking to bring the new reforms in the subcontinent, and for the same sake, Muslim League demanded its demands or proposals in the form of Delhi Muslim proposals of 1927. Now the British government sent their own representative, Sir John Simon, in 1927 to find out whether the subcontinent had got benefits out of the Montague-Chelmsford reforms of 1919 or not. So for this particular sake, they sent their own representative to study the political conditions of the subcontinent, so that accordingly the new reforms should be designed. As stated in 1919 reforms, I mean Montague-Chelmsford reforms, a commission will be set up after 10 years to inquire into the workings of the reforms, that how better these reforms proved to be for the people of the subcontinent. That would be studied after 10 years, as it means that from 1919 to 1929, how much benefits the subcontinent had got out of the Montague-Chelmsford reforms. So as they were approaching towards 1928 now, so 9 years had already gone. So it means that the British started working on it. So for this sake, they sent Sir John Simon to the subcontinent to study the reforms of Montague-Chelmsford of 1919. What were the proposals by John Simon? After visiting the subcontinent, meeting the leadership over here, and visiting many areas of the subcontinent, what were the findings of the Simon Commission? It said that diarchy should be abolished. It was a waste activity. It was nothing to do with the benefits of the people or of the British. So it should not be there. So that was the first proposal. Federal system, maximum Indians and provincial autonomy should be there. For federal system, there should be maximum number of Indians in the Central Assembly or Central Legislative Assembly, and provinces should be given more and more internal independence. And there should be separate electorate should be continued for the Muslims. Weightage for the Muslims in the minority provinces. Muslims should not have 1/3 of seats in central legislature. No reserved seats for them. So this goes against the Muslims. Sindh was to be a part of Bombay, would not be separated. So it means that again this went against the Muslims. Muslims demanded that Sindh should be separated from Bombay, but the Simon Commission rejected this proposal as well. So Muslims asked for joint electorate. They went against. They wanted to give the Muslims separate electorate. So again, you can say that this went against the Muslims' demand. So it means that overall, the Simon Commission proposals, they were not in the favor of the Muslims. And one very important factor, that all of these proposals and even the visit of Sir John Simon to India was badly criticized by the Indians, whether the Muslims or the Hindus, on many grounds. What were the objections? Hindus' objections. Commission only contains British members. I mean, there was no one from the subcontinent. Not even a single Indian was there in that commission to give guidelines to the commission, to Sir John Simon, that what were the demands of the Indians and what had passed in the last 8 or 9 years in the subcontinent, what benefits the subcontinent had got through Montague-Chelmsford reforms, and what sort of benefits they have got out of them. No one was there to tell them, as no one was added up in that commission by the British government from the local people, whether the Muslims or the Hindus. Federal system. The Hindus wanted that there should be the stronger federal system without giving any provincial autonomy. Hindus were against the provincial autonomy, as if there was provincial autonomy, the Muslims might have got a couple of provinces to rule on, to govern. For that sake, the Hindus, they were purely against the provincial autonomy and they were in favor of the federal system. Congress launched civil disobedience movement in response to this commission. Not paying taxes, going against the British rule. So that is what is meant by a civil disobedience movement. Breaking laws, not paying property taxes, not joining and resigning from the government jobs. They all were the part of the civil disobedience, and Congress launched civil disobedience movement across the subcontinent in response to the proposals presented by the Simon Commission. So it means that was a stronger step taken by the Indian National Congress to launch civil disobedience. Separate electorate for the Muslims. The Hindus were against the separate electorate for the Muslims, but Muslims were also against this one now, as in the Delhi proposals, Muslims were demanding the joint electorate for them. So it means that this was the common sort of objection, that Muslims wanted joint electorate, Hindus wanted joint electorate, but British, they were intended to give separate electorate to the Muslims. Muslims' objections, that why did Muslims reject the Simon Commission report? No reserved seats in the central legislature for the Muslims. Muslims were looking for the reserved seats for the Muslims, so that more and more Muslims should be over there in the assemblies to fight for the Muslim rights, but the reserved seats were not given. So this went against. Sindh remained a part of Bombay. So this was again went against the Muslim demands of the Delhi proposals. So Muslims did not get these 2 points. Status of NWFP and Balochistan should remain the same. Again, Muslims demanded that the NWFP and Balochistan should be brought in the political scene by imposing the British reforms over there, but the British denied it. So it means that the NWFP and Balochistan would remain as they were. So again, the Muslim proposal was rejected, which was presented in the Delhi proposals of 1927. So because of these 3 points, the All India Muslim League rejected Simon Commission. So you can get the 7 marks question over here, that why did All India Muslim League reject the Simon Commission? In the same way, why did Indian National Congress reject the Simon Commission? So 7 marks question, keeping 3 points from here. And you can have these questions as well, which have already come in the past papers out of the Simon Commission. And here was a banner, Indian unwanted guest, Simon go back. This was the protest launched by the locals over here in the subcontinent on the arrival of Sir John Simon along with his commission in the subcontinent in 1927. A banner produced at the time of the Simon Commission of 1927. So this is the 5 marks question of compulsory question 1B. So how does source B help us to understand Indian concerns about the Simon Commission of 1927? So what we have said, that why the locals rejected the Simon Commission. We have discussed those points over there in the upper points, and you can respond to this question keeping in view this manner. You are supposed to build up the inferences related to this particular event and relate them to this banner. That would be the response to this question. So as I told you that today we will have a smaller lecture that will be only two small topics. That would be the Delhi Muslim proposals and the Simon Commission. So we are at the end of this one, and do not forget to subscribe RU Speaks, as Raja Umar speaks for you for the subjects of Pakistan studies and global perspectives. And this is over from my side today. Inshallah, in the next lesson, we will talk about the 4 marks questions from 1885 till 1927 Simon Commission. What the 4 marks questions may come in your exam, we will discuss them in our next lesson. Till then, it's over. Thank you so much. Allah Hafiz.